How are you developers? I hope you all had a fantastic time delving into the foundations of HTML yesterday, where we got acquainted with essential concepts such as headings, paragraphs, comments, and attributes. Today's session is said to be just as exciting, if not more. Building upon what we covered yesterday, we are taking a deep dive into two crucial aspects of web development, that is nesting and adding images to a website. We will explore how nesting elements allows us to construct structures that form the backbone of your web pages. Nesting is a skill that every web developer needs to master, and by the end of this session, you will be weaving complex web structures with ease. Additionally, we will delve into the visual side of web development by learning how to seamlessly integrate images into our website. We will discover the ins and outs of embedding images using HTML, ensuring that our websites not only function flawlessly, but also look stunning. Lastly, we'll demystify void elements. Understanding how to use void elements is another step towards becoming a proficient web developer. So, get ready for an engaging and hands-on session. Let's explore the world of HTML nesting, image integration, and void elements together. By the end of today, you'll be equipped to create websites that are not only well-structured, but also visually captivating. Without much ado, let's dive in. When you go to the repo that you forked yesterday, you will see that your repo is behind. This is because Java programmers added today's notes, and the good news is that we can easily update our repo with one click of a button. Just a reminder, forking allows you to stay connected to the changes made by the owner, and you can sync your fork with the original repository to incorporate those updates. So now, let us sync our repository with the original one to get today's notes. To sync your repository, just click on this Sync Fork button. When you click on it, you'll see another button written Update Branch. Click on it. It will write Updating. Then you'll be told that your branch is now updated with the main branch. My branch shows 2 commits ahead because I pushed yesterday's code. It is ahead because the code is in my repository but is not present in the original repository. But as long as your repository is not behind, you are good to go. Keep in mind, pushing code to GitHub is a good practice. Now that none of our repositories is behind, you can head to VS Code and pull the changes that we synced. Let's now head to Visual Studio Code. Once you are in Visual Studio Code, you can open the terminal and use the command git pull to pull the changes that you made in your remote repository. You can see that it has pulled the changes, and now my image readme has some content. Now that we have all the resources, you can start learning today's class. As we said earlier, that today's class will be about nesting and adding images to our website. Before we learn about nesting, first let us learn about semantic tags. Semantic tags are HTML elements that carry meaning about the structure and content of a web page, making it more understandable for both browsers and developers. Semantic tags play a crucial role in providing meaning and structure to the content within a web page. Unlike non-semantic tags, which are primarily used for presentation purposes, semantic tags convey the intended meaning of the content they enclose. This makes the HTML document more readable for both developers and browsers, and it enhances the accessibility and search engine optimization (SEO) of the web page. Some common semantic tags include header, nav, main, section, article, aside, and footer. We'll see how each of them are used as we progress in the course. Now that you know about semantic elements, let us talk about nesting. Nesting in HTML refers to the practice of placing one element inside another, creating a hierarchical structure within the web document. Nesting is a fundamental concept that allows developers to organize and structure content effectively. Proper nesting ensures that browsers interpret and display content accurately. Nesting also creates a parent-child relationship between elements. Now that you know about nesting and semantic elements, let us create a file and see them in action. So you can create a file inside the images folder. To create a file, you right-click the images folder and select new file. We will call our file index.html. Once you have named your file, just hit on enter and the file will be created. Let us recap yesterday's class where we learned about headings, paragraphs and comments. So we said that headings start from H1 through H6. We'll just write H1 and H2 for this class. So H1 first heading and H2 second heading. Also, we learned about paragraphs. We'll just create a paragraph using the p tag and say that my cat is very grumpy. Also, just write a comment. To recap yesterday's class, you'll say this is a comment. We have said that nesting is placing one HTML element inside another. We've also said that nesting creates a parent-child relationship between elements. So in summary, nesting is placing a child element inside a parent element. So let us see how that happens inside the code. We know an element has an opening and a closing tag. So let's create our element called parent element that has an opening and a closing tag. Then you've said that nesting is placing an element inside another, like placing a child element inside a parent element. So you can place a child element inside this parent element. We can just call it child element. And this is how nesting is. If you place an element inside another element, that is called nesting. You will notice that there is some space before the child element. This spacing is called indentation. Nested elements should be placed 2 spaces further to the right of the element they are nested in to make HTML easier to read. Since we know what semantic tags are, we can remove this syntax and apply the real code to show nesting. So there's a tag that we talked about, it is called the main tag. Main tag is used to indicate that this is the main content of the document. So we can wrap all our code inside the main tag and apply indentation. We can just write main, then move all our code inside the main tag, and this will be nesting. As you can see in the code, the main element will act as the parent element, and the H1, H2 and the p tag will be the children element. Sometimes you can nest elements in a single line. This one is called inline nesting or inline structure. So to see the inline nesting in action, you can emphasize the word very in our paragraph. For example, if I want to insist that our cat was very grumpy, you can stress the word very by wrapping it in a strong tag. A strong tag is a semantic element used to emphasize a word or a sentence. So in this line 5, we can say that the paragraph tag is the parent element and the strong tag is the child element, because the strong tag is nested inside the paragraph element, and this syntax here is called inline nesting. Now that you know about nesting, let us talk about void elements. Void elements, or sometimes called self-closing or empty elements, are elements that do not have a closing tag. Instead, they use a single self-closing tag to indicate the start and the end of the element. These elements usually do not have any content text within them. An example of a void element is the image element. In this class, we'll talk more about the image element, and we'll see how we can add images to our website using the image element. So let's create our first image by using the image tag. So below the comment, add an image element. As we discussed earlier, an image element is a self-closing element. It does not have content or a closing tag. So this is how an image element looks like. If you compare it with the other elements, for example, the paragraph has an opening tag, a closing tag, and the content between the opening and the closing tag. But the image element is just by itself. It does not have any content or a closing tag. As we said earlier, all HTML elements can have attributes. So our image element can also have attributes. In this course, we'll talk about the two main attributes that an image element has. The first attribute is the source attribute. The source attribute specifies the path to the image. You can say path through the image, or just the uniform resource locator, the URL to the image. And there are two types of URL, the absolute URL and the relative URL. An absolute URL provides the complete address or path to a resource. It includes the protocol, domain name, and path to the specific resource. Absolute URL links to an external image hosted on another website. Now, let us see an example of how an absolute URL is used. We'll do so by going to our browser, searching for any image, then copying the image path and pasting that path in our source attribute and running the code to see whether we'll see the image in our browser. I can go to my browser and search for cat to get the photos of cats. I'll select this cat here. Then I'll right click on it once it has opened. I'll just right click on it and click on copy image address. I'll copy that address, then I'll paste that address in the source attribute of my image tag. Once I'm in my Visual Studio Code, I can just replace this URL with the actual URL that I copied. Then I can save it. So to confirm whether the photo is visible, I can just run my code using my live server by clicking the Go Live button. So I'll just click on Go Live. When the browser opens, you can confirm that the photo that you copied the URL is now visible in our website. So that is how you use the absolute URL. Now let us learn about relative URLs. A relative URL specifies the location of a resource relative to the current location. It does not include the protocol or domain. It assumes that the resource is on the same server or within the same directory. To see how relative URLs work, let us download an image and put it in the same location as our index.html file. Then put that location in our source attribute. As you can see, I have downloaded an image. I have called it cat.jpg. So now let us see how we can link the image using the source attribute. Since the image is in my current location as the index.html file, I will use the relative URL. I'll just write dot to mean the current directory, then slash, then the name of the image. When I save and go to my browser, I should see a new cat photo app. And when I go to my browser, I will see a new cat photo. Now that we know how to use the relative and the absolute URL, let us learn about the alt attribute. The alt attribute in HTML is used to provide alternative text for an image if the image cannot be displayed. Alt stands for alternative. and it is essential for accessibility purposes, as it helps people with visual impairments to understand the content of an image when they cannot see it. Now, let us see how the alt attribute is used. To use the alt attribute, just write alt, then write the text that you want it to display when the image is not visible, or for the screen readers to read. So I'll just write here cat photo. When I save and go to the browser, I will not be able to see this alt image because the image is there. So for us to be able to see the alt text, let us just mess up with this image so that you can see the alt text. I just changed the extension. So now let us go to the browser and see the alt text. When you go to a browser, you'll now be able to see the alt text. It's here. This is possible because we don't have the image in our machine. As you can remember that I messed up with the image. So the image that we are referencing in our code is not there in my machine. So if the browser cannot find the image, it displays the alternative text. And that's the importance of using an alt attribute. So that is it for today. Let us meet in the next class. Peace out.